It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the parents of Madeline McCann accuse an alleged stalker of a campaign of harassment. Gerry and Kate McCann appearing in court today, almost 20 years after their daughter went missing, to give evidence at the trial of two women accused of stalking their family, with one of the defendants claiming she was Madeline. Prosecutors say Julia Van Delt turned up at the McCann's home and called Kate mum while asking to do a DNA test. We'll have the latest from court. Also tonight, police say the man who carried out the Manchester synagogue attack called 999 to pledge allegiance to the so-called Islamic State. Jihad al-Shami was shot dead after that attack in Crumpsall, in which two people were killed. Counter-terrorism officers say he was influenced by extremist Islamist ideology. Plus, a significant rise in racist abuse directed at footballers. Sky News finds the number of online hate crimes referred to the police has quadrupled this season. And we'll hear from the British climber who survived an unexpected storm on Everest, which left hundreds stranded. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. All of that on the way, but first to breaking news in the Middle East. Sources familiar with negotiations over the war in Gaza have told Sky's Yalda Hakim that they are cautiously optimistic a deal could be signed within 24 to 36 hours. Let's go live to Jerusalem and speak to Yalda. Yalda, what have you been hearing this evening?
SJ, good evening. A lot of developments, actually. A lot of noise started to emerge and some leaks from those familiar with the talks. But the sources that I've been speaking to regionally, those familiar with what is taking place inside the room at the moment, say they are cautiously optimistic. There are some sensitive points, such as the list of Palestinian prisoners that Hamas wants released, and also Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza. But the fact that we have reached this point so quickly is absolutely remarkable. And just in the last few minutes, I've also been told by my sources on the ground that an initial statement may actually come sooner than 24 hours. So we may start to see things developing quite quickly. Now, once that happens, once that agreement is signed, then we will start to see hostages being released. We know that there are at least 20 hostages alive. Israel says they want the 48 that still remain inside Gaza, but there are 20 alive. The others are the remains of those believed to be dead. Hamas says they don't actually know the location of all of those hostages who have died, so it will take some time. But those sources familiar with President Trump's thinking say that for him, that won't be the sort of sticking point that will delay this, that he will probably be like, well, let's just get those initial hostages, the 20, out for now and get this first phase of this deal out of the way. So a lot of cautious optimism in this region. They're going to be working throughout the night. And like I said, my sources are also telling me initially they'd said 24 to 36 hours. I'm now hearing murmurings that there may even be some kind of initial statement that comes out to indicate that things are moving in the right direction at some point this evening.
Thank you, Yalda. We'll be following developments closely for us from Jerusalem, and we'll bring you more as and when we get it here on Sky News. Yalda, thank you. Now, the parents of Madeline McCann, who went missing in Portugal back in 2007, have been telling a court today of the distress caused by two women who turned up at their family home. Polish national Julia Van Delt and Karen Spragg from Cardiff are accused of stalking the McCanns for almost 3 years, making phone calls, sending emails and showing up at their address. A jury today heard how Miss Van Delt insisted that she was Madeline and asked Gerry and Kate McCann to take a DNA test. She shouted and sobbed in court today as they gave evidence against her. And Midlands correspondent Lisa Dowd has this report.
Madeline is a beautiful, bright, funny and caring little girl.
At the height of the search for her daughter in Portugal, Kate McCann was front and centre, clutching 3-year-old Madeline's toy. She was desperate to find her. Nearly 2 decades on, it remains one of the UK's longest-running missing persons cases. Artists created images of what Madeline looked like as she grew up, but it's alleged that one woman decided to try to convince the McCanns that she was their daughter. Julia Wandelt, who is 24 and from Poland, is on trial for stalking them. It's alleged she sent incessant messages to them, even turning up at their house in December 2024. Kate McCann told the court, "I pulled up on the drive. It was really dark. It was the weekend. We had the gales. I was opening the boot to get something out and I heard someone say, 'Kate.' I knew it was someone behind me, but I didn't know who it was. She called me Mum, I think. She was asking for a DNA test. Why won't you do a DNA test? And pleading with me." Mrs McCann said Wandelt was with co-defendant Karen Spragg from Cardiff, who was described as more aggressive and said, "Don't you want to find your daughter?" Kate McCann, who was giving evidence from behind a curtain, said she felt distressed. She managed to get inside the house and lock the door. At times, the defendant Wandelt, as she listened to the evidence, appeared to cry. She later shouted, "Why are you doing this to me?" as she left court. Every year in the McCann's home village of Rothley, there is this vigil for Madeline. At one of these poignant gatherings, it's claimed that Wandelt turned up looking for the McCanns and constantly tried to contact them. Gerry McCann told the court, "Kate was upset. I was getting frustrated and angry that these calls were coming. The phone went and I picked it up and answered it. I said, 'You're not Madeline. Please stop calling,' and then hung up very, very quickly. I made it very clear these were unwanted calls. To be honest, it was a bit of a blur." Both Wandelt and Spragg deny stalking the McCanns. The trial continues. Lisa Dowd, Sky News, Leicester.
Police say the man who carried out the Manchester synagogue attack called 999 and pledged allegiance to so-called Islamic State. Jihad al-Shami was shot dead by armed officers after that attack last Thursday in Crumpsall, in which 2 people were killed.
Al-Shami called 999, claiming responsibility for the attack. He also pledged allegiance to Islamic State. The attack continued, but thanks to the bravery of security staff, worshippers and the fast action of police, the attacker was prevented from gaining access to the synagogue. At this stage of the investigation, we are more confident that he was influenced by extreme Islamist ideology, and the 999 call forms part of this assessment.
Well, let's join our North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi, who's been following these new details for us from Manchester. Katerina, quite a lot of new information from Greater Manchester Police this afternoon.
Yes, not least that information about the 999 call, which was made by the suspect Jihadi al-Shami, not before the attack, but during it, within the first few minutes when he took a car, rounded into the barricades outside the mosque outside the synagogue, where I'm standing this evening. That call where he pledged his allegiance to Islamic State, made in those minutes that he was carrying out the attack. Quite an extraordinary detail. Also detail about the people that had been arrested in connection with this attack. We know that 6 people had been arrested in total, that 2 of them were released on Sunday, but Counter-Terrorism Policing North West confirming that 4 others will be released by the end of today. We've also had detail about the investigation that Greater Manchester Police had referred itself to. It had referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct upon the events of Thursday, when it was revealed that 2 of the people, one of the men that died and one of the men that were injured, was done so by a police bullet that was that hit them during the course of the police action that was taken here to neutralise a suspect. The IOPC have now said that those officers would be treated as witnesses in this investigation, and Greater Manchester Police's Chief Constable confirming that they said that they welcomed the news that no evidence of wrongdoing was found by their officers, as they said in a statement at the time, as they said that the officers were reacting this very fast-moving situation. So a lot of detail revealed by Counter-Terrorism Policing North West, which is the lead in this investigation, as well as Greater Manchester Police today. Outside Heaton Park Synagogue, where I am this evening, you might just be able to see police officers remaining in their high-vis vests. There has been an almost permanent security presence here, as well as across the whole of this part of North Manchester. It is the heart of the Jewish community in this area, and I've seen police officers outside of Jewish secondary schools, outside of nurseries even. This is a community that is still very much feeling the effects of what happened here nearly a week ago. And those further details now that 6 people in total will be released who had been previously arrested in connection with this attack. But counter-terrorism policing insisting and reiterating that the investigation does not stop here by any means, but that further detail from them today that the suspect in this case, Jihadi al-Shami, making that call to 999 during the course of the attack, pledging his allegiance to the so-called Islamic State group.
Katerina, thank you. Katerina Vitozzi there in Manchester for us tonight. Sky News has found there has been a significant rise in racist abuse against footballers since the start of this season. The number of online hate crimes that have been referred to the police has already quadrupled, most of the abuse found on social media. The police chief leading the fight back against this problem has now urged the government to form a new unit to address the issue. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has this report.
For all those who told Kira Rice she wasn't welcome at Peterborough United, this was the riposte to the racists. A hat-trick on her home debut in the FA Cup, scored in 5 minutes.
It was almost one of them out-of-body experiences.
As a British Sikh Punjabi, still troubled by how her signing was greeted on Instagram.
There was some racial slurs about my heritage, where I'm come from, that I don't belong in this country, that I should go back to X country. For people to question whether I belong in football purely based on the colour of my skin, I think is something that's really difficult to get your head round.
But Sky News can reveal online hate has dramatically worsened in English football. The Football Policing Unit told us there have been 170 referrals in the first 3 months of this season, far more than the previous 2 seasons combined at this stage.
We're seeing more reports, which is depressing. I think we're also seeing that the number of those reports that actually meet the criminal threshold has increased. There's an awful lot in the political sphere that people are saying things that probably a few years ago just wouldn't have been thought of. So I think it taps into that broader societal piece.
An England women's footballer by the name of Jess Carter was subject to some quite nasty racial abuse.
One of the most high-profile football racism investigations is into the abuse faced by Jess Carter during England's Euros triumph. This police footage of one of the arrests. We can now reveal there's been a third, and 6 people overseas are under suspicion. 3 cases are pending with Elon Musk's ex. And whether it's X or Instagram owner Meta, there is not agreement on the grossly offensive legal threshold. And the challenge is dealing with international police forces, with 2/3 of referrals of racism generated overseas.
Some just aren't interested, we won't get a response. Others will try and take positive action.
What would help the Football Policing Unit as a new body across English football to tackle racism?
I think that would make a massive difference, and whether it's education, whether it's in stadium hate, whether it's online hate, the way we're going to tackle this most effectively is by doing it in a joined-up way.
Overhauling how racism is tackled, a priority for those targeted with abuse.
No one really wants to talk about this sort of stuff, and I can understand why, but for real change, for genuine change to actually occur, you have to have these difficult conversations.
And as some players showed last week in the Women's Super League, change doesn't come by taking a knee, but taking a stand. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Let's talk more with Rob, who joins us now. Rob, there's been a call for a specialist unit, and presumably that's not just to deal with online hate and racism, but also what's happening in stadiums as well.
Yes, Mark Roberts, the head of the Football Policing Unit, revealing to us that he believes there needs to be a more coordinated approach across the game. It's too piecemeal, different elements, whether it's the leagues, the FA or the police operating separately, when it's clearly this issue of racism not only online but also spilling back into stadiums. There's a concern the political climate, some of the anti-immigration process as well is emboldening some forms and extreme of racism, which is ultimately targeted at players. And have we shown it's not just at the very top of the game, not just those WSL stars, but also in the lower leagues. And it can really obviously pain those players who just want to do their job, just want to perform on the pitch. And one of the concerns of the police is still dealing with the social media firms. The description of X being there's some slippage in terms of how they're addressing racism. Challenges we've discovered getting information out of Meta about how they're responding to racism. And what I heard from the police is the fact there's a disconnect between what they see as crossing the criminal threshold for being racist and needing prosecution and what the social media firms believes is actionable, and that can lead to challenges getting the information out to them and identifying the users. And then there's the wider issue of foreign forces, because a lot of this abuse is coming from Asia, from Eastern Europe as well on social media, and the police are finding some of those forces just aren't interested, just don't see it as a problem, and it's beyond the jurisdiction here to then go and prosecute people abroad. But as we've shown, hate crimes online, suspected hate crimes online this season have more than quadrupled compared to this time last season. It's clearly an escalating problem that we've uncovered, and something obviously that the players want addressing.
Very much so. Rob, thank you. Rob Harris with the latest on that story uncovered by Sky News. We can speak now to Jemiah Richards, who is the assistant manager at Sporting Calcer. Now, the team's players walked off the pitch during a match against Hereford FC earlier this year after their goalkeeper suffered racist abuse. Jemiah, thank you so much for coming on to Sky News to talk about this issue. You'll have heard that report there from Rob Harris. Online hate against footballers, racist abuse quadrupling this season. I mean, we're not even that far into the season. And, of course, you've seen it firsthand in a local match. What's your reaction to this?
First of all, thanks a lot for having me on. From my point of view, I'm not overly surprised. In a nice, I know it's harsh to say, but our goalkeeper's been racially abused twice already this season, and we're only in October, and he's had to deal with that twice. And the first time he dealt with it, and we dealt with it in-house. And the second time, I think, because it was so publicised, it was something that kind of gained some traction. But I'm not totally surprised. It's not something that I've seen once. Obviously, my coaching career and in my non-league playing career, it's not a surprise at all. And it's just because there's nothing actually being done punishment-wise as of yet to kind of get rid of it.
Yeah. Jemiah, during this game where this incident happened, the second incident towards your goalkeeper, you stopped the game and your team left the pitch. You took direct action.
Yeah.
What can be done? Because, it's not up to black players to do something. This, isn't your problem. This is being directed against you. What can clubs and supporters do to support you through this and to stop it?
Well, first thing I think is you take a stand, and as much as we're talking from a club where we took a stand, actually we've got to also give the plaudits to Hereford, because the Hereford management, the Hereford chairman, the Hereford players, and 99% of the Hereford fans that were there were disgusted. They stood by us. It wasn't like we walked off and they wanted to play. They were completely with us. If you see their manager, Paul Caddis, his interview after, he was very, very strong with his opinion on racism in football and his club, and he's was quite clear that that shouldn't happen. They've gone out and got a banner and paid a lot of money between them to go and get the banner to try and show that they're with us with racism. But I think I must have to stand by until there is real punishment from the top to say, actually, this isn't going to happen. The police are trying to do as much as possible, but until online platforms are kind of making sure that this is not an issue, until the FA and other organisations can show that this is not an issue, they can actually stamp it out, I don't think it's ever going to change.
Do you support this call for a specialist unit, government-led, to tackle this? Because, we are seeing it more in stadiums. I mean, you think this kind of abuse in stadiums was a thing of the past, but it's still there, as you've seen firsthand. Online, it's increasing. And as you said, you don't feel like there's enough punishment, a coordinated effort to be consistent in punishment, you know, lifelong bans for fans and things like that. Would you support a specialist unit?
Absolutely, because it's just another way of us showing and putting something in place to show that actually this isn't acceptable. It's proactive to show we're actually trying to do something as a community, as a country. As you know, you putting this in place, it means at least it shows and it's some sort of a deterrent to people to say actually this isn't acceptable. People come out to watch a game of football. People come out and give time away from their families. And nobody wants to hear that racist abuse, and no one wants to be racially abused. So putting things like this in place to try and deter people away from racism, it can only help.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just looking at those figures from the football policing unit, quadrupling of online hate towards footballers this season, that's huge. And you sort of think, why is that happening? And, you know, we reflect it on this programme every night. We live in a society that is feeling increasingly divided, prejudice, you know, out there in the open, whereas before, you know, some people might not say it, but now for various reasons they feel emboldened to say it. Do you see that as influencing what we're seeing here online and at football games?
I don't know if it's a influence or if it's because of probably where we are as a society at the minute. It's been noticed more, and as you say, people feel a little bit more bold to say it and empowered to say it. And look, the correlation and where we are in society and what's going on, it'd be very hard to ignore the correlation. But it's also something that I do think was there before, and I think because of where we are as a country at the minute, and we are potentially looking quite divided as a country, and there's a lot of issues society-wise, I think it brings it to the forefront. But look, 2 and 2 equals 4. So unfortunately, you've got to look at the correlation and say where we are. But I think we still also got to remember, and this is me saying this as a black man, I do believe it's the minority. I don't believe it's the majority of people, and people might tell me I'm naive for saying that, but I don't believe it's the majority. But the minority have got a very loud voice at the minute, and the minority are winning. And we've got to put things in place to make sure everyone, number one, understands the minority. Number two, make sure that they do not win.
Jemai, it's been really good to talk to you tonight. I really appreciate you coming onto the programme to talk about yours and your team's experience, indicative of what's going on at the moment. Jemai Richards, their Assistant Manager at Sporting Calsa, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Still to come on the programme, Kemi Badenoch making her bid to secure her control over the Conservative Party leadership with a pledge to scrap stamp duty. And we'll hear from one of the climbers caught up in an unexpected blizzard on Mount Everest that left hundreds stranded.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Now, almost 1,000 hikers left stranded on Mount Everest after a snowstorm struck have now reached safety. A severe blizzard struck while around 900 explorers, guides and herders were trekking the world's tallest mountain over the weekend. Some of those rescued were reportedly suffering from hypothermia, while others were escorted to a safe zone to receive medicine, food and oxygen. Well, one of those caught in the storm at the weekend, Rob Mason from Jersey, who joins me now. Rob was climbing Everest to raise money for charity in memory of his daughter, Kezia. Rob, good of you to join us on the programme tonight. Talk us how events unfolded at the weekend, because things changed dramatically during your climb.
It did, yes. We were fortunate in the fact that we were actually on the way down. So we were coming to the end of our trek. And in the last couple of days, the storm hit. We were further down than those that have suffered, particularly on the Tibetan side. But the rain and the thunderstorms went on for about 18 hours, and a substantial amount of rain destabilised the area. And of course, that rain fell as heavy snow and blizzard conditions higher up and trapped those that were higher up the mountain for us.
Well, sadly, we know at least one hiker died. As I said, hundreds stranded on the mountain's eastern slopes in Tibet, 1,000 people in campsites. Talk to me about what you saw as you were making your descent, how the conditions changed, because I understand the path you were following actually disappeared.
Yeah, so the part of the path that we trekked just 12 hours before, we were one of the last groups to pass that trek before it got taken away by a landslide. So that particular route, and this was on the lower slopes again, became impassable for anybody. So alternative higher routes had to be taken. And whilst we were grounded in Lukla, which was the end of our trek, we were hearing the stories coming down the mountain of groups being airlifted off where they could be, or others being locked down in their tea houses just to wait out until conditions improved. And sadly, whilst we were at Lukla helipad, we sadly saw the recovery of a body to the helipad from somebody who'd been taken ill on the mountain, and the emergency services weren't able to get to them in time.
Rob, you must feel extremely lucky, and I'm sure many of those who you spoke to and swapped stories with felt exactly the same.
Indeed, yes. Our luck was all about timing. We had amazingly good weather for our trek up, but it changed so quickly. Our base camp day was the start of the first snow. We had about 3 inches of snow, but we were then fairly comfortable getting down until the last couple of days, but then it really hit hard and it really hit fast. And we were passing many people on the trail who were just on their way up. So they were heading into this storm as we'd just come out of it. And
the rescue operation, as I said, nearly 1,000 people there, and Mount Everest, it is one of the toughest challenges for hikers to take on, but it is a well-supported route. What did you see of the rescue operation? Because while we know people do it, you shouldn't take it for granted that it isn't without danger. I think some people, when they hear about this challenge, forget about that side of it.
Yeah, so the vast majority of people that were trapped were on the Tibetan side, we were on the Nepalese side. But one of the first things that we heard, we were obviously trying to get out at that point, but the Nepalese government had commandeered effectively or given instruction that all helicopters were for search and rescue missions only. So that's when the story started to filter down the mountain of just how severe it was, where we'd been just 48 hours earlier.
Yeah. Rob, I do want to give you the opportunity to talk about why you were there. As I said, Mount Everest, that's no small feat. The phrase is, it's like climbing Mount Everest, but you've actually gone and done it. Tell me about Kezia and why you wanted to complete this challenge.
Just to be absolutely clear, we made it to base camp, not to summit, so we don't want to set any mis-expectations.
Do you know what? That's challenge enough.
It certainly was for me, yeah, because I'm not really built for endurance things. So
you and me both, Rob.
This was a huge personal challenge, but we sadly lost our daughter to suicide when she was just 14 years old. That was 3 years ago. Kezia, our beautiful Kezia. And since then, various events and activities have come together to form Kezia's Fund, which is a charity in her name that provides funding to projects to help young people's mental health here in Jersey. And so this was a massive personal challenge for me, and it was an absolute honour to do it in her name and raise those much needed funds for those projects.
Yeah, and I bet it felt like she was looking out for you on that day, which I know will have been very moving for you. You know, it's tough enough as it is doing that challenge, but doing it in your daughter's name. And just looking at that footage there that some of our viewers were watching, I'm seeing it for the first time as well, you at base camp with all the flags. What was it you were leaving there at base camp for Kezia?
The symbol of Kezia's remembrance has been a little green heart that has also evolved into our charity logo. It's a combination of the green heart, which is her favourite colour, and the love that we have for Kezia, and the mental health awareness ribbon. So those two things have been combined, and that little pin badge was left in the shadow of Everest itself as our little moment of remembrance at base camp for Kezia.
Oh, I'm so glad you got the opportunity to do that, Rob, because I'm sure you know a lot of people there. So many people take on that challenge for so many personal reasons, raising money for incredible causes, and I'm glad you got to have your moment there. How much have you raised so far? Talk to me about what that money will be doing, what you hope it will go on to do.
So I was fortunate to have 6 of the friends with me on the trek, supporting Kezia's Fund. We think when all said and told, we'll probably be just over the £20,000 of funds raised, which is a fantastic achievement. And that will go to projects here in Jersey to help a wide variety of projects for young people to support and improve their mental health, be it in crisis or for long-term mental health needs. The fund so far, since Kezia died 3 and a bit years ago, has raised over £250,000 so far. So we're absolutely delighted and proud to keep that on. And as I say, I'm very grateful to have the 6 friends to support each other and make it top of the mountain, or to the base of the mountain, I should say, and raise more funds this year. It's been amazing.
Yeah, you've always got to take your mates along with you, haven't you, for these kind of challenges, all in it together in the name of Kezia. Just quickly, give the charity page a plug, or the Just Giving link as well.
Yeah, so if anyone can donate, that'd be hugely appreciated. So if you Google Sports Giving Rob Mason, it will take you straight to the activity for the Everest Base Camp trek, and as ever, funds will be very gratefully received.
Oh, well, listen, Rob, thank you for coming on to talk to us about your lucky escape from Everest and, you know, reaching the base camp for Kezia and your charity. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Go well.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you've been affected by anything Rob and I were talking about there, you can contact the Samaritans. 116123 is their number, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. I'm just going to bring you the latest pictures we have now from the White House. We understand the US President, Donald Trump, is going to be taking part in a round table in the White House. Oh, he's already there. Let's take a listen to what he's saying.
Close. And they're doing very well. We have a great team over there, great negotiators, and they're unfortunately great negotiators on the other side also. But it's something I think that will happen, got a good chance of happening. I may go there sometime toward the end of the week, maybe on Sunday, actually, and we'll see. But there's a very good chance negotiations are going along very well. We're dealing with Hamas and many of the countries. As you know, we have all of the Muslim countries are included. All of the Arab countries are included. Very rich countries and some that are not so rich, but just about everybody's included. It's never happened before. Nothing like that's happened before. And our final negotiation, as you know, is with Hamas. And it seems to be going well. So we'll let you know. If that's the case, we'll be leaving probably on Sunday, maybe Saturday, maybe a little later than Saturday evening, but that seems to be our schedule. It should be clear to all Americans that we have a very serious left-wing terror threat in our country. Radicals associated with the domestic terror group Antifa that you've heard a lot about lately, and I've heard a lot about them for 10 years. And other far-left extremists have been carrying out a campaign of violence against ICE agents and other officials charged with enforcing federal law. In Chicago, anarchists have surveilled at least 4 local ICE facilities and posted diagrams of the buildings online, meaning nothing but bad, accompanied by photos of specific ICE agents that they're targeting, one in particular who's a top person and a great patriot. In July, approximately a dozen Antifa-aligned militants stormed the ICE facility in Texas and then lured officers out of the building before firing dozens of rounds at police. They were crazy, frankly, shooting one Texas officer in the neck. And in Portland, Oregon, Antifa thugs have repeatedly attacked our officers and laid siege to federal property in an attempt to violently stop the execution of federal law. Everything we're doing is very lawful. What they're doing is not lawful. And what the governor and the mayor of, as an example, you could say of Portland, and you can say certainly of Chicago, it's not lawful what they're doing. They have to be very careful. In addition, 2 weeks ago, a radical left terrorist in Dallas conducted a sniper attack on a local ICE facility, killing 2 people and leaving behind a note that read, "Hopefully this will give ICE agents some real terror." That's bad. This attack came the very same month that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a far-left extremist who inscribed the words, "Hey, fascist, catch," meaning catch the bullet, onto the bullet shelf itself. The epidemic of left-wing violence and Antifa-inspired terror has been escalating for nearly a decade. At universities, Antifa has organized riotous mobs to attack campus speakers. I see it all the time. And these are agitators, anarchists, and they're paid. And you'll find that out. You'll be finding it out very soon. You should see what we have on these people. These are bad people. These are people that want to destroy our country. We're not going to let it happen. They've used armed gangs to assault local police in cities nationwide, and they've attacked journalists reporting on their crimes. So the journalists that report on their crimes, don't worry, you're very safe. I hope that's not going to turn you around, but they have been very threatening to people, but we're going to be very threatening to them, far more threatening to them than they ever were with us, and that includes the people that fund them. Probably some of the people I know, some of the people I dine with, but if they do, they're in deep trouble. So we're going to be looking very strongly at the people that are funding these operations. When you see the signs, and they're all made out of a beautiful, beautiful paper, beautiful, nice, stiff, very expensive paper, with beautiful wood handles, all the same color. They come from very expensive printing machines. These are not people that write out their signs in a basement that believe in something. These are paid anarchists. At least 3 of these courageous journalists have personally been victims of Antifa attacks. Andy Ngo has been repeatedly beaten by Antifa thugs for his work in Andy is a very serious person, too, I have to tell you. I've been watching him for a long time. Is Andy here? That's what I thought. Hello, Andy. I thought that was you. You're looking better than you do out on those streets, huh? You look much better. It's nice to have you. You feel a little safer here, I think, maybe. Well, not that safe, because you have them. You have to worry about that. But thank you very much. Andy Ngo has been repeatedly beaten by Antifa, and including one assault that left him with a brain hemorrhage. Only days ago, Nick Sortor was assaulted in Portland by a flag-burning mob, and we've made it 1-year penalty for inciting riots. We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the court said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. I've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it from not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts. This is what they do, is they incite. When you burn an American flag, you incite tremendous violence. We have many examples of it, many examples of it, and it's actually down on tape, and you see things happen that just don't happen unless it's the flag that's burning. Very recently, Katie Davis Court was hit in the face with a flagpole in Portland by an Antifa radical, leaving her with a very blackened eye. So, Katie, thank you very much. And I'd like to also say that I watched Nick. Where's Nick? Is Nick here? Nick? Hi, Nick. That was a rough time you went through. I hope you got my little note. I wrote you a note.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It helped a lot because it was a difficult situation. It was very stressful, and your note helped a lot. I truly appreciate it.
I thought it was terrible, actually. I thought it was terrible. So we'll talk about it a little bit. Under the last administration, the Department of Justice targeted faithful Catholics, Christians, and patriotic parents as domestic extremists. They said, oh, they're extreme because they believe in God. They're extreme because they go to a Catholic church, or evangelicals, where everybody was under the gun. Unless you were a really bad, sick person, then they left you alone. Under the Trump administration, we're going after Antifa criminals, and all who fund and support their campaigns are in serious trouble. And we have a lot of records already, a lot of surprises, a lot of bad surprises. It's people that you would never think. I want to thank Attorney General Pam Bondi, who, by the way, yesterday was incredible in Congress. It was amazing, and she just did it from the heart and the brain, because she's very smart, in all fairness. But she did it from the heart, and she did it an incredible. Everybody was talking about it. She exposed some of these fake senators, these terrible senators, people like Blumenthal that had a phony war record. For 20 years, he talked about what a hero he was, and it turned out he never went to Vietnam. For 20 years, he talked about being a hero in Vietnam. Then it was exposed when he said what platoon he was with, and it was exposed that somebody was watching from that particular platoon. They said he was never with us. And then he went out and he cried, and he was ready to drop out of the election. And disgraceful. And then he looks at people like Pam and he starts criticizing her, and she's a patriot. They ought to do something with that. You know, we have a young congressman that's right now in jail for lying about where he went to college and other things. It was, you know, frankly not good. It was pretty bad. But it was nothing compared to Blumenthal. I mean, what Blumenthal did, he was for 20 years a hero, a great war hero. And then he sits back and, you know, sanctimonious kind of a guy, looks down, how dare you do this to the American public, you know? What a fake. But I thought Pam was incredible yesterday, as well as Secretary Kristi Noem, who's really out there courageously, and I appreciate it, Kristi, amazing what you're doing. FBI Director Kash Patel, who's really coming up with some great information, Kash. It's great. Keep it coming, because there's plenty of it. Deputy Attorney General, one of the best lawyers you'll ever find, Todd Blanche, who I know personally is a good lawyer because I'm here. Thank you very much, Todd. Good job, Todd. Let me ask Attorney General Bondi to say a few words, and then we'll follow it up with Secretary Noem and Director Patel. And we're going to have some of the people around the table, very courageous people, and they're going to be talking, journalists, almost all, and they're going to be talking, and we'll take some questions from the press at the end. Okay, Pam, please.
Thank you, President Trump. And as you made clear, Antifa is a domestic left-wing terrorist organization. We've seen them on video for years because they wanted to be seen and they got away with it. They beat journalists, they attack courthouses, they attack police stations, they dox and assault our law enforcement officers. The Biden administration let them commit these crimes with total impunity for years. So did Democrat leaders like Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson. Last week, independent journalist Nick Sorter was arrested just for protecting himself against Antifa. I saw it online and I called Nick. I couldn't believe what happened. He did all this just trying to save our American flag from being burned. He was pushed down and assaulted, yet the local police arrested Nick, not the Antifa thugs who did this to him. Antifa feels empowered to operate in the open because weak Democrats have turned a blind eye to their actions. Their hatred for President Trump and for law and order agendas fuels their violence. We've seen more than 1,000% increase in attacks against our ICE agents since January 20th. Secretary Noem is out there fighting for you firsthand to keep our federal officers safe, to keep our federal buildings safe, and we're not going to have it anymore, these thugs. We saw what's happening in Portland. and Chicago.
President Trump there hosting a roundtable in Washington at the White House. These are the latest pictures. He was asked about the peace deal in the Middle East. He said it is very close. He said he may well go to the Middle East by the end of the week, perhaps on Sunday. He said the negotiations with Hamas seems to be going well. Sky News' Yalda Hakim, sources telling her that we could get some movement on a peace deal within the next 24 to 36 hours. We'll bring you more as soon as we get it here on Sky News. Back to domestic matters, and the Prime Minister defending his government over the collapse of a trial of two men accused of spying for China, instead blaming the previous Conservative administration. Now, it comes after the UK's top prosecutors said Sir Keir Starmer's administration was to blame for not labelling Beijing a national security threat. The case is against teacher Christopher Berry and former parliamentary researcher Christopher Cash. It's been dropped after it couldn't secure the necessary evidence needed from the government. The director of the Crown Prosecution Service, Stephen Parkinson, said attempts to secure the evidence were made over many months. Oh, it's quite a complicated story, this one, but that was it in a nutshell. Let's get more detail now. We can speak to Christopher Steele, a former intelligence officer at MI6. Really good to have you on the programme this evening. As I said, from what we understand it, this case has been dropped because the government couldn't provide evidence at the time these two men were accused of spying for China. They couldn't find evidence that the government of the day, the Tory government, considered China to be a threat to national security. Is that right?
Yes, it's fairly extraordinary given statements that have been made actually by the head of the security service, Ken McCallum, and the former head of MI6, Richard Moore, just in recent times, that in fact China presented a massive threat to national security and was really quite preoccupying, in fact, for the security services to try and contain that threat. And that threat is a very broad threat. It's not just intellectual property theft, as happened before, but it's targeting of dissidents, Chinese dissidents in Britain. And it's, in fact, as we've seen in this case, allegedly, the targeting of Parliament itself and MPs. So it is extraordinary we've got into this situation where there's a tangle over the various laws and definitions. And I think what underlies this, unfortunately, is an unreality, an unwillingness to stand up to the fact that China is an adversary of Britain. We do have to do business with it, but we should call it out and punish them when they get caught.
Yeah, it's sort of a hold your nose type relationship. I mean, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, today saying, you know, basically this Labour government is sucking up to Beijing to secure trade relationships. That's the sort of background noise to all of this, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing new in that. I mean, we had the golden age under Cameron when Xi first came into power. So governments along the way have not really developed a coherent strategy towards China, unlike, say, towards Russia. And that's the big underlying problem here, that we can't make up our mind how to handle China, whether China represents a trade opportunity, an economic opportunity, particularly when the economy is bad and when Trump is imposing tariffs on us and so on, or indeed a major national security threat. And from my perspective, it's undeniable that China is an adversary of the UK. I mean, quite apart from the abrogation of the Hong Kong final agreement, we had, for example, intrusion into the Election Commission's database last year, which the government was also very slow to admit to. And we don't know what was going on there yet. And reports of the ISC, the Intelligence and Security Committee and others, have made it very clear that we need to stand up to China and be firm when they get caught and to re-establish deterrence against them, because at the moment they're dividing the government, they're manipulating the government, and they're getting away with it. Yeah,
I think one of the phrases used at the time was to call China an epoch-defining challenge, you know, not called a national security threat outright, but the likes of yourselves and, as you said, other big top security officials at that time were very clear about the threat that China posed and what they pose now, and you've just outlined that. But, you know, the big question is, does this basically give a free pass to China to spy on the UK?
Arguably, although I think the actual the legislation was updated, as you may know, a couple of years ago. So we do have a new National Security Act, which can lead to the prosecution of an agent of a foreign power, not necessarily one defined as an enemy. which was the problem because the 1911 Official Secrets Act only had that definition and, of course, was outdated. So I'm not sure that legally there's a problem going forward. I think there's a problem of perception and a problem of deterrence. And that is that this case collapsing in the way that it has will do nothing to deter agents of foreign powers operating in Britain. And of course, one of the other things that's happened that hasn't been mentioned a lot is not only the bounties that have been put out, the financial bounties that have been put out by China on Hong Kong dissidents and Chinese dissidents based in the UK. So that's a major problem. But also other things that relate to this relationship, like the fact that China is very actively involved in supporting Russia's war in Ukraine, for example, and is not subject to secondary sanctions by our government when our government has announced that that is part of their toolbox in dealing with that war. So there are a number of areas here which are very concerning and where there's no deterrence really against foreign powers spying on the UK, not just China, but other semi-hostile and hostile governments will be looking at this and thinking this is an encouragement to us to work against the UK. It's not just Russia and North Korea and Iran that work against UK and spy on UK. It's all sorts of medium powers, ones that we don't regard as enemies or as allies, and that comes into play here as well.
Christopher Steele, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much. British former intelligence officer with MI6, now Director of Orbis Business Intelligence. Really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, let's take a look at the sport. Jessica's here with that. And we are talking about the latest round of international matches. They're getting underway tomorrow night. Is that right? Yeah, night off tonight. Scotland straight back into World Cup qualifying. England facing Wales in a Battle of Britain at Wembley. So a lot to look forward to.
There is. For this England-Wales game, it's only a friendly. And I say only because sometimes with friendlies, you don't get the best team out, you don't get the best players. But for this friendly, the Battle of Britain, they're playing for pride, they're playing for bragging rights, and they're playing because Wales... You look at Wales, they go into this with full force, but they have not beaten England since 1984. They haven't beaten England at Wembley, even further back than that, 1977. But they will be without England. Harry Kane, their captain, their talisman.
This earlier on. So he took a knock on the ankle or something, didn't he?
He did. So he's hurt his ankle. He hurt his foot. It was only 4 days ago. He was playing for Bayern Munich in Germany, where he plays his club football. He's out, but there are plenty of players, key players, that can step up to the mark, like, you know, Ollie Watkins, for example. But let's hear from the Wales manager, Craig Bellamy, because I mentioned that term friendly, but he says it's going to be...
Inverted commas.
Exactly. Anything but. So let's hear him on the importance of this matchup.
To us, it's excitement. And just, like I said, we're not here as tourists to enjoy the occasion. No, we're here to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, that's not exactly a friendly demeanour there. That is a man that is taking it very seriously. They're not there to be tourists and muck about. They're there to do a job. Should we talk about Scotland? Because, of course, they haven't qualified for a World Cup since 1998, with 4 points in their first 2 qualifying matches. A lot of optimism around them, and they face Greece, right?
They got Greece tomorrow at Hampden Park, so they're at home. But you're right, it's been 27 years since their last World Cup appearance. They've missed the last 6 tournaments, but... when they got those 2 wins, away from home, I might add, as well, against a really strong Denmark side and a Belarus side, they got 4 points from those 2 games. You think, Scotland have got a chance here. They've got 2 World Cup qualifiers coming up, the first against Greece, and then they've got Belarus again on Sunday. Both games are at home, which gives the fans a lot of optimism. They've got big game players as well, the likes of Andy Robertson, the likes of Scott McTominay, who has become a cult figure in Italy, where he now plays his club football. They absolutely love him. He's playing some of the best football of his career. Of course, they got the Tartan Army, the 12th man. Yeah. But if that wasn't enough excitement for them, the Scotland team are actually staying in the same hotel as an international global pop superstar.
Stop it, who?
Katy Perry, no less.
Well, I never. Is that a distraction?
Is it a distraction?
Could she lead a sing-song?
Oh,
I don't know.
Get them all around the microphone. Not that, though. I say that. The players might know who she is. The head coach, Steve Clarke, probably has no idea. Let's hear from him.
Is she? I didn't know she was there. I've heard the name. I'm sure if you played a couple of your songs, I'd say, oh, I recognise that one, but I couldn't name you one song, I'm sorry. And that's no disrespect to Katie.
I love that, no disrespecting. They'll know Raw, won't they? You're going to hear me Raw.
Firework?
I know, yeah, he's probably more of a Swiftie.
He probably is.
More of a Swiftie.
I'm sure he'll be hoping that Scotland don't blow hot and cold for that match and they get the job done against Greece. But away from that football, we've got plenty more coming up in the bulletin.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 30, 40, 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Quick look at the weather before we go this evening. It's looking relatively settled over the next few days, although there will be some rain around, mainly in the windy north. Most places fine this evening. Windy in the north, as I said, outbreaks of rain and drizzle over northern and western Scotland. Northern parts staying windy overnight with patchy, drizzly rain becoming more extensive, but northern Scotland will see skies clearing later. Southern parts, meanwhile, will be fairly calm. That's all from the UK tonight. We will return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. But up to next, it is The World with Yalda Hakim, and she'll have more on that breaking news about a peace deal in the Middle East. Stay with us.